Let's start. Welcome everyone. My name is Inigo Cruz and I'm part of the Ya Hacemos Europeos team. And today I will be your guide through the new EPSO competition, through the builder and supplies, project managers, specialist. Hopefully, we will manage to answer many of your questions today. I know that you're feeling very curious about what's going on this competition and particularly on the eligibility criteria. We have received several questions on that aspect. So the idea is that we will reply all of them. To be particular, how we are going to approach it. Very simple. We will do an overview of the main elements that you suppose you should, as candidates, be familiar with. So that will be help to set the scene for all of you. Second, we will see analyze the application and the eligibility criteria, and then on the last part, we will talk about the test or the test that you are facing and the resources to prepare them. Okay, and of course, at the end, the Q&A part or session, meaning that if something that hasn't been replied yet, with pleasure, we will address that question. Because just have this in mind, bear this in mind, please. I mean, we have prepared the following of today's webinar, following the notice of competition. That's the first main source, but also our own experience and your questions. The only caveat is that sometimes we address your questions or the elements that interest the most to all of you, not in the moment you were expecting. Maybe not in one slide, but we are coming to it in a couple of slides later. So that's why we only asked you on exchange of this webinar to wait until the end for your questions. Because if we are lucky and we were good enough, we have foreseen your question and its answer, but it's coming. That's the thing. So instead of interrupting, because it takes a bit longer, we do all the questions at the end if something remains unsolved. That's a single request for all of you. For the rest, we hope you will find today's session useful and it will solve, as I mentioned first, the questions that you have in mind regarding this competition. So let's go for it, right? Let's see what's going on this competition. So first of all, few remarks. Regarding the four fields, we have four fields here: the project management in the building sector, field one; field two, architecture and project management; field three, electrical engineering and project management; and field four, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, engineering and project management. So more or less project management is everywhere, but with different details, touches, colors, call it as you please. So that's one thing. Elements that you should bear in mind. First of all, you can only apply to one profile. So check beforehand in which one you fit better. Think about the documents that you have to prove your experience, your experience, and all these elements will help you to select the field area that you are better suited to apply. That's one thing. Don't think much about the number of seats. There's plenty of seats for all of you. How come? I mean, come on, there will be hundreds of candidates and there's only 153, 75, 93 seats. So is that enough? Are you sure? Yes, we are sure. Why? Very simple. Experience tell us that many candidates, they don't prepare themselves. That's one thing. So second element, many other candidates, they will prepare wrongly in the sense that they don't study one of the tests, they don't consider some aspects. So in total, between those who fail the reasoning, they haven't prepared, those who don't show up for the exam, or they do a wrong preparation, they don't really follow what they are supposed to do for this competition, at least half of the potential candidates are gone already. That's one thing. So, and the second thing is that at the end, the exams, the test depends more on the element that you do right, on the element that you answer correctly, rather than the how well are performing the other candidates. There are plenty of space, plenty of seats for all of you who perform correctly, who do a good job in the multiple choice. They get more than five in the writing, and of course they pass the reasoning. So that's why you depend on your own effort. You depend on your own success facing the test rather than what the others do. That's why that we say that your chances are all meaning that your opportunities to be on the reserve list are there. So forget and disregard the number announced by EPSO of candidates, because that's not the real number of candidates. It's completely different. This is a starting point. I mean, we always in Yasemos we like to insist on this because many candidates tend to think, no, this is impossible. I'm not gonna make it. If you start thinking like that, you will rewrite because you're already putting yourself the barrier in front of you. No, I mean, think that you can do it. Learn from your mistakes. Work not hard but smart, little by little, quality, not quantity, and you will get there. That's one thing to consider on this competition. And then let's go to other considerations. So regarding the other consideration, all of you will be invited to the exam. But wait, I'm not sure if I'm eligible. Does it mean that if I'm invited to the exam, I'm eligible? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that you are invited because you fill in the application according to the rules, and that's it. Only later, in the last phase of the competition, you will be checked on the eligibility. And in that moment, nasty surprise could appear if you don't fulfill the criteria, if you're not sure that you cover the criteria, and still some margin of doubt. So just be careful and check beforehand. If you are just taking this competition, even if you don't fill in the criteria, because eventually you would like to apply, you're an architect, you have maybe 2 years of experience, clearly not enough for the competition, but still you want to practice, you want to try for the future, fine, you know what's going on, but that's it. So another element, the exam will be in one day, and don't think that you can select the date. It will be imposed by EPSO in principle. So don't think that about the possibility of changing the date. Look, I'm pregnant, I'm delivering my baby the day of the exam. I'm telling this because this is a real example. In those cases where there is a real reason, medical reason, for instance, not to take the exam, EPSO can do an exception and have a second date, but only for those who have a real reason not to take the exam the day of the accord announced. So that's the only exception. All of you will have to take the exam. But I have a very important project. I have a very important meeting that day. Sorry, not a problem. EPSO will say you have to do the exam the X date that we have marked. That's it. If you get sick and you have a medical certificate, you could get a second chance. Or there's a technical problem, but that's it. Another element, be patient. Results will come at the end. So that's another thing that you need to bear with you. And you will, after taking the exam in the coming months, you will start wondering when I'm getting my results. Will I get my results in February, in March? We doubt it, and we will talk a bit more about this later. And then also, you will be the first ones. Congratulations to use the new platform, ATO. So we cannot tell much about this platform, but from what we know, it's quite similar to the previous one, to TestWe. So shouldn't be a big deal, big difference. The only advice we can give you is stay alert and read all the instructions provided by EPSO regarding the new platform. When you register for the exam and you are preparing yourself for the exam, you will receive several communications from EPSO. With this in mind, short review of the general conditions. I think that all of you know them, but just in case, you're a national of a member state. Member state? I mean, but I'm coming from Turkey. Sorry, you are not a member state, not yet. Ukraine? No, not a member state, not yet. So you cannot participate. You have fulfilled your obligations imposed by the military service. I know that we have many Spanish fellow Spanish watching this video. Yeah, in Spain there's not military service compulsory, at least there was, but in other countries still there is. So that's why this obligation. You meet all the character requirements for the teacher's concern. It's a generic request. So, and about the languages, I will address it now, and that's it. I mean, very simple. You need C1, a B2. into different languages. Can it be my language one English? Yes. Can it be Spanish? Yes. Can it be Hungarian? Yes, as well. Language two, can it be Spanish? Yes. English? Yes. French? Yes. With one condition, it's not the same as the language one. They have to be different. Which one is better? There is not better, and you don't have to provide any certificate or any evidence. It will be tested. It will verify that you are capable of using those languages at that level through the test of the competition, and that's it. Not you don't need to worry more about this because sometimes some of you ask, oh, where can I upload the certificate of languages, or should I provide evidence that I have a C1 in English? No, you don't. I mean, you've been working all your life in English, so you didn't take the chance to get a certificate because you didn't need it. Fine. I mean, this is a practical verification, not a theoretical through a certificate. So should be fine. Shouldn't be a problem. Yep. And then coming on the languages, as I say, the reasoning test will be on language one, meaning verbal, numerical, and abstract reasoning test will be on language one, and the multiple choice and the written test will be in language two. Which one is better? As I said, it's up to you. Or advice, always try to do some tests in one language and the other. Remember that in the EPSO web page, you have some tests for practice, and you can select all the languages available. So use them to calibrate to see if you are strong enough to take the reasoning test in a language that is not your native language. we, I'm saying this because usually people take the reasoning test in their native language and they do the field related and the written test in the working language. Most common scenario, English. But some people prefer to do the opposite. They prefer to do the reasoning in English, French, or Italian, or any other language, and do the field related and the written test in their own native language. That is valid, that's legal, and it's up to you. Or single advice, considering that this is a technical competition and the field related will be technical to some extent, is that you take the field related exam in the language that you work the most. Meaning, if you've been working as an architect and project manager in Italy for 20 years working in Italian, maybe you're interested in taking the exam in Italian because you know all the terms, all the ideas in Italian. But if you've been working in an international company traveling from one country to another, always using documents, regulations, and technical stuff in English, perhaps the multiple choice is better to take it in English because it's the language that you associate with that kind of content. If it's in Spanish, Spanish. So that's our single advice that we can provide. But still, or try it yourselves, take some reasoning test, take some questions of the field related or the written test to see how you perform on each language. And from there, you decide what is going to be the combination. You have until the deadline to submit your application to decide the languages. Remember that now it's possible to edit your applications when it has been submitted. In the past, it wasn't possible, but now with the new portal, it's possible. And I will come back on that element later again. On the languages, I think that this is clear now, and it's no longer a problem for any one of us. Hopefully, finger crossed. But now let's see the big thing, the academic experience required and how to prove it. Because yeah, I know that there's been some controversy regarding the documents that we can provide in order to justify the years of experience required. Okay. And by the way, you see there is our croqueta. It's our stagiaire. She's been with us for 7 years time, but still is our beloved stagiaire. And sometimes she like to show up on our presentations. So for field one, very simple. There are four options. No more complicated than that. And it will depend on your studies. If you have done studies attested by a diploma in architecture or engineering in the area of building sector, meaning if you are an aerospace engineer who has been building rockets for the European Space Agency. That's wonderful, all my admiration, but this is not your competition. This is not a valid degree. It's not building sector. But the rockets have air conditioning. Yes, but it's not what we call building sector per se. You got my idea, right? Well, I mean, you've been a lawyer. I mean, lawyer is not engineer, it's not architecture. So this competition limits a little bit those who can apply from the perspective of your academic studies, your university degree. So it depends on the length of these studies. So if it's 3 years, you need 7 years of experience. 1 year more of academic studies, 1 year less, and so on until 6 years. Because in all study plans, there were 6 years studies. There was this possibility, or also there is a combination of a master, a degree plus a master in the same area. That's possible. You will have to explain, by the way, in your application, but those are the combinations. So, but if you get a 3 years diploma in architecture, and then you have done a master in, I don't know, in artificial intelligence, let's say, it only counts the degree in architecture, 3 years, so you need 7 years of relevant experience, for instance. As simple as that. Then for the field two, and architecture and project management is the same thing. It's the same principle, 3 years plus 7, or 4 years plus 6, 5 plus 5, or 6 plus 4. Hope this is clear. I mean, they are quite equivalent, so I think that selection of one field or the other will depend more on your work experience rather than anything else. And then for the field three, it changed a little bit. Electrical engineering and project management, because here they only consider the option of 3 plus 7, 4 plus 6, or 5 plus 5. And they list a number of diplomas or areas of studies that are acceptable for this competition. Audio engineering, building services engineering, civil engineering, blah, 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 until other engineering specialists linked to the building sector. Imagine that you are generic engineer. That's the name, the title indicated on your diploma. I'm just inventing. I don't think that that nonsense is, but I just inventing. So, but you in your studies have studied a lot of buildings, about the electric installations in buildings, air conditioning, and so on. So you will have to explain your application, but that's a perfect valid degree. Again, you have studied philosophy. So I don't know if that is just the kind of philosophy where you study philosophy of the buildings and the project management. So I doubt that that degree will allow you to get into this competition. Sorry, it's not 4 years, but 3 years. No, 5 years of relevant experience. So I will correct the typo later. Also, I forgot to mention, of course, the PowerPoint that we are using today, the presentation we're using today, will be accessible on our web for download. So you will you can download it there. No need to do screenshots now, or just go frame by frame then later in the video to watch what we put here. For field 4, it's same principles in field 3. So although the list of degrees of diplomas, they change a little bit, not much, some of them are different, but the criteria remain the same. Hope I managed to explain myself only for the part of academic background and years of experience. That's the first part. So you need to have a check on this part to be eligible as a candidate in this competition. You have the academic background and you have years of experience. But now we are moving to the years of experience. How do they count them? How can I do it? How can I prove it? Those are your questions. Let's go. So, but it's a kind of Tetris. Yeah, I mean, being transparent and honest. When I was preparing the presentation for this webinar, it was amazing because it's one of the most difficult PowerPoints I have to prepare in the sense of how to make it simple for all of you to understand the requirements, because it's true that in the notice it's not clear. It's not visible in one glimpse. I mean, you need to read very in detail the criteria in order to know what to fulfill. So yeah, it's been quite of a challenge. So, but let's see. Put yourself the as a background the music of Tetris. Pam, 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 pam. Let's go for this. In any case, one warning: we have done our best to help you. We have done our best to simplify the message, and that's why we have edited some of the text and we have rearranged the information. In case of doubt, in case of contradiction, or in any case, the notice of competition is the valid document. So if there is any discrepancy, please follow the notice of competition. It's always the legal and valid document to be followed. What we do here is an explanation and a simplification to help you to understand and fill in your application as candidates. I mentioned before the academic, but now we have to add the criteria of the experience that combines two elements, element A and B, that is the nature and the scope of your work experience. You will see that in each file or field, you see that there's this nature, this the element that you see on your left, and there's the other element that is on your right, is the scope of your work. This is a combination. That's one thing. And another thing that is being referred in the notice of competition is the screenshot that you see below that is coming from the annexes. I mean, point 2.31 E from the annexes. We're not inventing anything. How the experiences count. The notice indicates a minimum threshold of tasks that we have to fulfill. And that's common in all the fields. But it doesn't mean that if you have the minimum threshold, you will get the whole of the time. No, they will do a recalculation of pro rata. Imagine that they say minimum 4 tasks. You have the 4 tasks, so you may get 50 or 75%. But other candidate who has 6, 7 tasks will account as 100% of the time indicated. Imagine that you have 4 years of experience in a job, in one of the jobs, and doing 4 tasks. And then EPSO decide to count that as a 75%. Another candidate has, meaning that you will have as equivalent to 3 years of working experience instead of 4. Another candidate with 7, 8 tasks fulfilled during these 4 years of experience, meaning that the time will count as 4 years. This criteria is not public and it's been done later by EPSO and the Board of Assessors. So meaning that you have a certain element that all of you will be assessed following the same criteria. Those who fulfill 4 tasks, it's 75%. Those who fulfill 6 or more, it's 100%. I'm inventing. I'm just guessing. It's not the real criteria because as I say, it's the board who will decide and they will be consistent with each one of you. So it's not, oh, look, that guy got 4 and got 100 and I only got 75. No, no, no. It's you got 4, 75. You got 4, 75. Got 6, 7, 100%. That's for all. The same criteria for all. And this is in the notice. And this is something that you should be aware of. Just because don't get overconfident and say, oh, I just got the 7 years they require me. But imagine that it's just with the minimum. So it's risky. Could be that you get less time. So be sure that if you have performed more tasks than the ones that the minimum indicated, be sure that it appears in your application and you specify that. Don't leave it for the minimum. Always explain as much as possible. In your competition, in this competition in particular, it's going to be needed this kind of information. Talking about information, let's see the detail for field one. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's not so complicated. What we have done is remember that we saw that there was the criteria A and B, right? The thing is that at the end they combine these elements. We need to fulfill A and B. What we rename it as numbers 1, 2, and 3. And we saw that you absolutely have to fulfill the criteria number 1 and number 2. But the number 3 could be one option or the other. That's why if you see at the bottom, we say 1 plus 2 plus 3A or 1 plus 2 plus 3B is equal to experience for which you are eligible. So, and there they mention about the 2,000 square meters per project building. Be careful because there is an asterisk, there's a footnote here, and that's what we put. Project building refers only to the part of a building that the candidate work on unless the project covers the entire building. If the project covers part of a building, only the areas concerned will be considered, meaning that if you experience the information that you provide showcases that you have done half of a building that it was 10,000 square meters, that's fine because it's half, it's 5,000 square meters. That's perfectly fine. But imagine that the project was 2,500 square meters, but you only did half. So it's 1,250 meters, not enough. So be sure that the documents and the evidence that you provide justify this size of the building, the size of the project. Okay. And also for the criteria 3B, they say that the required area of 10,000 square meters may be met cumulatively across multiple projects, buildings on which the candidate has worked. So here it's a bit different. It's cumulative, while the other, it was independent. Just be sure that you read the whole of it and that you fulfill that you have the consistent experience, then the consist of project management 5 or more of the following activities. And when we are talking about the following activities, is this one. Remember, there's a list of activities in total 17 for field number 1 that you have to be part of them. But it's impossible to have the 17, no problem. They only ask for 5 or more. I have 10. Is that enough? Probably yes. Probably. I mean, again, it's EPSO criteria. I have 5. That should be fine, but be ready because they may cut you percentage of the whole experience, time experience, because it's not wide enough. I have 4. Forget it. I mean, you can try. Maybe you get lucky, but in principle, 5, it's not fulfilling criteria number 2, so you are out. Just saying. Imagine that you just started your career recently and you just won't try this competition for the sake of watching what could be in the future, what is valid, but you are not eligible. Then, well, these are the criteria. I mean, you are the expert in building, you are the expert in project management, so you know better than me. I will talk about how to prove it and how to demonstrate in a few slides. Now I'm only concentrating on the criteria for the 4 fields. Field number 2, very similar. Very similar. In fact, they have the same footnote and the same criteria here. The difference is that the activities are 16. Activities a bit different compared to field number 1. Again, it's your responsibility to check the activities in field 1 and field 2 and see in which one you have more experience or you have more evidence. Imagine that by chance you've been working for 15 years, let's say 15 years, but seems that despite doing a lot of activities, you only have evidence to explain more in one field than the other for any reason. So just choose that field, the one that you have more evidence. Even if I have a slightly more experience in the other, yeah, but can you prove it? No. Then go to the field you can prove. And you see that here they repeat again the criteria of the square meters. Something that is a bit just, I would say, copy paste from one to another, but it's just like that. The big difference are the activities listed to check against the 5 of more in the criteria number 2, um, as you see. And then for field number 3, electric engineer, he's a bit different. It's a bit different. They only refer to square meters on the first criteria. So with constructor, renovator maintains area of 2,000 square meters or more, of course. That's one thing. And then they mention the entitled the performance of one or more activities listed in point 1 and or point 2 within one or more domain listed in point 3. What is a bit, that's why we compose this map. Hope it's clear for all of you. So point one, we see technical activities. So one or more activities. I have done two activities, three activities. So I have done preparing technical specifications on bills of quantities. I have done supervising building services, and I've done technical coordination of studies. Fantastic. Well, that's great. They say one or more. I mean, if you have done none, then you have a problem. Then I say and or. Well, if you have done nothing on point one, but you have done on point number two, that should be fine as well. And they should be, of course, within the domains. Problem here is that you will have to explain clearly in your application all these elements, because I'm certain that it's always difficult to find a single document that makes all these elements visible. Maybe you are lucky and you're in a company that they are willing to write down a document detailing all these informations. That will be fantastic, but that will be the exception. Usually it doesn't happen. So that's why you will need to explain yourself in your application, and you will need to fill in the four criteria, meaning for the criteria 3 and 4, there's engage in at least four activities listed in point one, you see on top of there, and work as project manager or engage in at least three activities listed in point two, you see there. So you need to map. What you can do is you can use our PowerPoint later, or you can just take the notice of competition, cut the different, do screenshots on the different parts, and recompose in a single document to have more visibility, because it's true that it's not so easy just following the document. So, but hope now it's a bit more clear. And then for the number for the field number 4, same thing. I mean, again, this is very similar to field number 3, only the technical activities, the areas, and the domains change a little bit what is covered, but same principle. So as you see, the square meter criteria appears for the first element that you need to fill in. So you will have to explain, will have to provide some evidence. And talking about evidence, how is that going to be? So we got an explanation in the notice. What is quite useful, you can feel yourself lucky. I know with all these criteria, I mean, it's a bit of a burden, but you can feel yourself lucky in the sense that there's a good explanation here of what you are supposed to provide. So they say that when describing the education professional experience, you must clearly specify the following. So be sure that in your application, this is clear. The standard duration of the study program completed corresponding to the number of years. We'll see that with the form, in principle, that should be covered. But there's one thing. I don't know about all of you guys, but my own personal experience when I was at the university was quite common that fellow students took longer than the official length of the studies. I was doing a 5 years study, a licenciatura called in Spanish, Spain, and that was 5 years in theory, but many took 6 years, 7 years. Does it mean I have been studying for 6, 7 years? I need less experience? No. Your official study length is 5 years. So it means that that's what you are supposed to indicate or inform in the application. So be sure that if you indicate the dates of starting and ending of your studies, you put then in the information how long are they officially supposed to take. That's one thing. The second thing, the duration of professional experience in question. Again, dates should be clear. I mean, especially imagine that you've been working somewhere else, that doesn't count. So be sure that this is specified. All the elements that are relevant need to be there. The specific activities undertaken, select from those listed in point A2, meaning that use the vocabulary, use the ideas. So be sure that anyone who doesn't know about you anything, so a person who never met you, can you read your application and see that from reading your application and comparing it to the notice of competition, it's clear that you have done those tasks. Explain them. Please especially if you've been involved in a technical area when you have your own argot, you have your own slang, your own expressions, and they are not the same as the one used in the notice of competition. Be sure that you translate that language, that you explain. It wouldn't be the first time that we've seen candidates. We have helped them. Transport competition, for instance, luckily they did it after, but at the beginning they just put their experience just like that because they were coming from relevant companies in in transport. So they thought this is obvious for me, but for the evaluator who was not coming, the one who checked the eligibility was not coming from transport. So that person didn't know anything about that. So what is explained here and what is explained there, they don't match so much. So no, the candidate is not eligible despite passing all the competition. Was what? Luckily, the candidate could complain, set an explanation. No, no, I meant with this experience, it's covered these elements according to the notice of competition. So that was accepted later. But we don't want to go through that. We want to explain things right from the beginning. That's why they insist. Use the wording from the notice. Use the information available in the notice. That's the language, the argot, jargon they know, and that's the one that you are supposed to use in your application or explain in your application. This is key. And I'm insisting, and you say, "Come on, that's so severe. It's not so relevant, guys." No, the eligibility checks are very tough. They're very hard on all the candidates. So be advised to be careful. Now is the moment to be careful filling in your application. And then you will have to provide plenty of information about your projects. You see there a full explanation, all the elements that they are requiring. So as much information that you have of your projects, the better. I'm afraid so. I mean, you can count that the EPSO will all use this data only for the evaluation purposes. So it's not that they are, imagine that you're working in a project for several years and the project is somehow protected. So you can share to some extent the minimum details to fill in the requirements of the competition. Okay, but it's there. I mean, it's indicated. So, no, they don't need so many data. They don't need the information about the plants. They don't need the information about the surface of the building. Yes, they need it. It's there. We are not inventing anything. So please be very careful to fill in all these informations. And where to fill in? Well, uh, sorry. And before that, on the information we fill in, when they ask about the documents, again, this is a screenshot from the notice. They say originals or certified copies of the following documents. Of course, you cannot just push the papers on the screen of your computer like that. I mean, no, we're beyond that. But they mean to scan, copy, send images of the original documents or certified copies. Not imagine that you have a black and white photocopy of your diploma or university diploma. Usually, university diplomas are colorful, and you just send this photocopy in black and white. You scan it and send it like that. That's not a valid document. You have the original, you scan it, and you send it. Very likely, all of you already have this kind of documents already scanned, so shouldn't be a problem. We know documents from former and current employers. My employer is not giving me a full disclosure of what I'm doing, and I cannot ask him, it, her. No, you're right. Unfortunately, that's an element. So you need to provide some other documents, a combination of documents that provides the full picture. Remember these images that are composed of small images at the same time that create the illusion or the reflect in a of a big image? Same idea. So you can provide a lot of small documents that give all the information that you need for to justify your experience. So think about it. I mean, it could be your contract where the dates are indicated, or it could be, I mean, the announce the disclosure, the job vacancy of your job when you apply, plus other document that justify that this is really your job and your task. That could be it. pay slips, and so on. It's just to check the data. I mean, social security records in many countries, they already have this information. So you may not need the pay slips, but you can provide any official document from a public administration from a member state is accepted. And you can use any official language of the European Union, 24 official languages of the European Union. Okay. And if you've been an independent worker, then budgets, invoices, projects, all the information that you can have on this is what you need to in order to prove your experience. Hope this is clarify a little bit the issue, because we know that it always creates some controversy. And now, yes, where to fill in all this information. This is a screenshot of the CV area of your application, where you can put all the information about your experience. So you see that there are some red asterisks. Those are the areas that you absolutely have to put. But there are others that, even if they are not compulsory, they are needed. I mean, the more details, when they say more details, I mean, guys, this is the place where to explain the tasks and the areas that you work, all the elements. And you see that you have the opportunity to put some links, and you can attach documents. My file is very big, so cut it in small pieces, or sacrifice some of the resolution of the document, provided it is still readable and visible. So no more than 25 megabytes. But don't be shy of providing more information. Don't think, oh, they will be bored or they will be pissed off by so many documents. No, the more information you can provide to justify your experience claims, the better. Hope this is clear. I hope I managed myself clear on this explanation. And regarding the where to fill in the information, well, you will have to use the single candidate portal. I don't know how many of you already have used this portal. If you don't already, part of the information will be already there. If it's the first time, no problem. Read the instructions. I mean, they're relatively well explained instructions on how to deal with the single candidate portal. You will need the U login access to use it. And I mean, personally, I find it that is better compared to the previous portal used by EPSO, because also it allows you to bring the information that you already have uploaded. You don't have to fill in, type again all the information. Although in this particular competition may require, for those of you who already have a profile, to add more details in your CV in order to be sure that your application fills in all the criteria. So you will see something like this. You will see a list of the competitions. At this moment, the 4 fields of this competition, you select one. You can only do one. And if you start working with one and you try to work other or to open other, then you will get a warning message. You cannot. So you have to delete the previous in case you want to switch to another field. But don't be worried, or it's not a big deal if you start one field and you realize that you need to move to another. Just simply delete and start another one. You will have the quick links to your CV, but and the different parts of your application. But above all, read the instructions. I'm insisting a lot with instructions, but people, this is what we need. I mean, for once they have done a good job on this. I mean, things are working properly. So compared to the IT problem we have in the past, so use it for your advantage. Spend 5 minutes reading the instructions, because it will save you hours of problems later. And then you will see a vision just like this. So we just took one random profile. So field number 2, architecture and project management. Yeah, I fulfill all these elements you have to declare. And you see on the left that there is registration data, my CV. That's the part that you bring from your general profile in the single candidate portal. The motivation and strengths, which you have to explain. Those are the classic questions that have been there always, or since, I would say, since always, from many years on. And it's always useful to dedicate a few minutes to answer them, to assess ourselves on what are our motivations and the strengths for this competition. It will help us to put some perspective on it. And You will have here the opportunity to fill in your profile. If you click on the My CV portal link, it will appear on another window. So be sure that it can be open regarding the application. And now, after the application, I'm moving to the test, to the exam, to the second part. So how it's going to be? Very simple. You see, we told you the three tests will happen on the same day. But the thing is that despite that, if you fail, it won't be your case, but other candidates, if they fail the reasoning part, they still won't get any result until the end of the process. It's like that. So, and you will have to get some scoring that is marked, and the time of the test is also indicated there. The important thing is that only the best 229, 112, 139, and 135 on each field will get their the written review, because they will establish a ranking of scores on the multiple choice with all of you, all the candidates who participate for each field independently. Just remember that they will establish the list, and they will see what are the 1.5 times the number of seats, and they establish the cut, and they start reviewing the written from the top to down and checking the eligibility. And at the end, those who are within the number of seats foreseen for this competition have the highest ranking in the multiple choice, and they have passed the writing and, of course, the reasoning. So they will be on the reserve list. This is how the process goes. It's relatively simple, but yeah, it takes time and it takes a lot of patience for all of you, unfortunately. But a few more details on the exam, and before that, on the timeline. Remember, until the 17th of October noon, the registration for any competition closes at noon with EPSO. Always at noon, not midnight. Please do it. Do it before that. I mean, we're on the 19th of October. It's almost 1 month ahead of us. Good enough, right? You have to upload the documents. Yeah, you have until February 2026. But and probably the exam will happen earlier, probably. But still, do it as soon as possible. If you have the documents, as soon as possible. We expect that the exam will be in November. I mean, there is another exam for the communication candidates that is happening end of October. You are using the new platform, so we're expecting your exam will be November. But it's our expectation. This is not a promise. This is nothing that we can guarantee to grant 100%, but that is what we expect. And I think that episode what it's trying to do. If they get some technical problems still with the new platform and the adjustments, it may take a bit longer until early December. Otherwise, we will be talking about January. But we expect some information once the application period closes. We expect some updates on that part. And then you will have to wait several months, hopefully only several months. So meaning September 2026 to get the results. We are saying this based on the experience with other competitions now in motion and the time that it's been taken to deliver the results. It's like that. And then from there, the reserve list and the opportunity to become an officer. Remember that in these competitions, you don't get a seat, you don't get a position or job immediately, but you get the opportunity to be in the reserve list and become an officer, because only officers can only be recruited from the reserve list. That's the rule. And the test. Yeah. A bit more on detail on the test. So I mentioned before about the time that it's taking. This is why I mentioned 1 day, 1 full day, because in total the exam is 145 minutes, a bit 2 hours and a half, more or less. You take, but the truth is 65 minutes for the reasoning, and usually you will start at 10 if they follow the same procedure for you that with other competitions. You start at 10. And then there's a break of 1 hour, 2 hours. Then you will do the multiple choice, 12, more or less, between 12 and 1. And then the written test could be perfectly at 2, 3 p.m. That's why we said that you will need the whole day. especially if you're not working in the European institutions, where it's easier to take the day for an exam. They sympathize with the process. If you're working in a private company, usually you will have to take the day off. There's no chance that you can do something in between. Although during the break you can connect your computer and you can do whatever you want, but still. In any case, please, this to be seen and to be confirmed with the EPSO final instructions, because you will be using the new platform. Maybe the new platform introduce new strategies, new methodology for the exam. We will let you know the moment we get confirmation, and we may organize a new webinar on the new platform. Who knows? Just leave it as a comment if you see it in the video recording later. And also, let's not forget, the whole process takes longer, especially the revision, the exam takes the same. If there are a lot of candidates, if there's a big number, nothing that you should be worried, but only that, well, if there are thousands of candidates, until all the whole process is being checked, and despite that the number of corrections of the written test are limited, still it will take a bit longer. Then on the reasoning, the best advice we can provide you. I mentioned before that many candidates tend to do in the native language the reasoning. What is perfectly fine, but be careful, don't get overconfident. The verbal reasoning, many candidates are taking in the native and they think, oh, I'm native, I dominate the language, I know the language better than anyone else, so that shouldn't be a problem. Yes, but it's not a language exam, it's a reasoning exam. That is verbal, it's only an excuse for reasoning. And they don't reason, they just go through because they're native and they go fast and they fail. Because we've seen that lately, it's the verbal that it's giving us some few bad news among our students, but overall in the candidates, yes, plenty of bad news because they fail the verbal reasoning. That's why we insist, pay attention to the verbal, don't get overconfident. Be very careful with that. And then in numerical and abstract, despite the difficulty of operating in the numerical only through your screen, not having a pen or paper, still getting 10 points out of 20 with the two combined shouldn't be difficult. Also, you can check our YouTube channel. We have some examples of reasoning exercises. Then, regarding the field related multiple choice, two things. First thing, check the notice point in its field, the point 3.31 or 2 or 3 or 4, and then next to where they describe both the tasks, the areas, and expertise. Those are, you are experts in your field, so you know what are the technical stuff required for all these elements. Those are the elements that we think are susceptible of being questioned in your multiple choice. Each field will have its own multiple choice. That's clear. So expect the reading notice again to see. I mean, in my field, they mention the regulations or how should be the air conditioning for the buildings and what are the standards and so on. So, what are they? What are the regulations that apply, or European regulations? So, all these elements should be considered. Okay, I didn't want to bring the screenshots of each part because it will add nothing, but just go to the notice and check these elements. And what is not in the notice, but we did it for you, it's a list of a few items that we think that could be useful. These are public sources. They can be found through Google. So, and they are all European, meaning the management plan for the Office of Infrastructure and Logistics in Brussels. And you can take the one in Luxembourg as well, because that includes the different considerations from the perspective of technicalities regarding European buildings. So that will help you to get familiar with the criteria, with the needs and the certificates used in the institutions and the ones that you will have to work with. Then the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, that could be an interesting legislative piece because, I mean, the European buildings, they have to fulfill this directive. The EMA certification as well for the European institutions in particular, that could be also another thing. This manual of standard building specifications is also accessible externally. So, and this is for the institutions as well. I think it contains a lot of useful insight. And of course, as your competition contains a lot of project management, remember that the methodology proposed by the European institutions is PM square. So be sure that you're familiar with it. You don't need to be certified, so you don't need to pay for passing the exam, but you need to be familiar with it because you may get a question or two about it. So always good to be ready for this part. And now let's talk about the writing because there are three tests: the reasoning, the multiple choice, and the writing. This is the writing. So based on the notice of competition, what we think is that very likely all of you will have the same document, and the document will be touching the idea of buildings and engineering for buildings and project management. So it will be an associated topic for this part. Okay, because you're doing a writing. If you were doing a European Union free text essay, that will be no matter what topic, European topic, but in your case, it's a writing, so meaning that it will be touching the competition, the field of the competition. Okay? So remember as well that this is a communication exam. Despite that the document is touching your field of competition, it's not about showing how smart you are, proving that you know everything about how to build buildings or how to do the maintenance of the buildings, but how to you use the document that is in a familiar topic. So just to make life easier for all of you, um, and you have to do the task that you will be assigned. That usually is prepare a briefing, or document, a summary, a communication, a speech. This kind of communication exercises on the topic, and they will use the anchors that you see on the screen. This is extracted from EPSO web page. So you need to be structured, you need to be concise, to the point, you need to be clear in your ideas, subject matter, and you have to customize your approach. If you are writing a text for general public, it's not the same that it is for technical expertise or technical experts on the field. You don't use the same words, right? And also you only use the information from the document, nothing else. Having that in mind, if you think this is not so difficult, it's not so challenging, right? I mean, I bet all of you can do it, and you can do it great, with one caveat, one condition: you have only 40 minutes. And in 40 minutes, that becomes a challenge because the assignment, you will know it only the day of the exam. The document is available 2 weeks beforehand, but the subject only the day of the exam, and you need to think fast, type faster, and produce a good text. That's a challenge. 40 minutes is the challenge. It's not the knowledge, it's not the content. Otherwise, you have the whole day. You will produce excellent documents, fantastic documents, no doubt about it. But in 40 minutes, oh, my friend, that's far more difficult. That's why we always tell you practice, practice, and practice. That's the key. And then, last but not least, before addressing your questions, what we can do for you. For instance, free webinars and materials, as we are doing today with this webinar. But of course, in October, we begin with our study group for this competition. So we will submit you information when we will send by, the link to the recording about it. Also, we have dedicated sessions to prepare the writing test. If the study group is too much for you and you only want to address the writing test, we can do it as well. Also, for the reasoning part, we will have it. And for other competitions, we have also study groups, especially for generalists, for 85. And of course, if you are already working in the institutions and you're interested in internal competitions as well, something that we are already experts in dealing with and successfully helping you to pass the competitions. And last but not least, of course, you can follow us on social media if you want to stay alert of anything that we do. We will always announce them, all our activities in our social media. If you go to a video or if you are watching our video recording, please click the like. It will help us with the algorithm. Or leave a comment as well. That's always be appreciated. And if it's a question, we always answer sooner or later, but we will answer to your question. And now talking about questions, it's now your time. So we want your questions. So let me go through the chat as well, but also you can raise your hand and ask your question. Okay, yes, the test will be remote. When can we find example of field related and writing test to practice? A writing test and field related. I'm not familiar with any free source to practice on those two areas. We may publish a few questions for free practice on the multiple choice, but that's it. I mean, usually we are the only ones who are giving for free something. What about the recommendation letter for the employer? It's a valid document if it's signed, can be identified as the employer. Yeah, it should be a valid document to indicate the task that you fulfill. Um, yep. On the field on the square meters, yeah, I already explained the reason on the square meters. So could I have a project of 2000 meters and 10 years of experience in buildings above 2000 meters, but somewhere in 100,000 meters and be eligible for fulfilling the activities? Of course, I think so, Gregory. I think that you would fulfill this criteria. Let me see. Is there any specific book we can buy to prepare? No, there is not. I mean, not for this competition. There are some books for the reasoning part, specialized on that part. We propose instead of a book or training that we just always customize for each competition. That's how we approach it. Do we need the letters from all previous employers? Can we self-declare? You need letters from your previous employers or information. I know by name, I assume that Matteo, you are Italian. I know that in Italy there's a possibility of a self-declaration, and it's considered a legal document. I don't know to what extent EPSO can accept that. They were clear in the notice that they need the reference for third parties, because of course we can declare ourselves a lot of things, and they have no way of to check that evidence. So that's why you need from another party to verify that you fill in the criteria and you have the experience. When is the last day considered for the relevant experience? I have 3 years and I need 4 years. Will I have any chance? With all the respect, Christina, I don't think so that you will have, because the day is the day of the closing the submission of applications. So it means 17th of October. But then it could be 3.8 years. It's not enough, even if you have 6 years of studies. Be aware, if you have to have a PhD, the PhD count as 3 years of working experience. So if you have your studies, let's say 5 years studies, and you have your PhD plus 3.7 years, then yes, you will fulfill the criteria. Are we allowed to have a printed version of the provided document during the day of the written exam? No, you are not. You will have it on the screen and it's indicated in the notice. You will have a copy on your screen. That's it. Will you publish the link to your practice package in your social media so we can sign up? Yeah, for sure. We will have it in our WhatsApp channel, Telegram, everywhere. Are we allowed to have a paper for writing something for the numerical? Carolina, unfortunately, no, you are not allowed to have any paper, because now remember this document, this exam is done remotely. So no paper, nothing. You're only allowed to have a glass of water, and that's it when taking the exam. You have to do everything on the screen. That's why I mentioned that in the numerical, it's a bit more challenging than in the past, not having pen and paper, but still it's feasible. You only need 10 points out of 20 between numerical and abstract. So you train yourself and you can do it, no problem. If you go to yasemoseuropeos.eu, you will see it on the top of our web, but also we will say it on the when we send the link to the video recording later, and so we will send also the WhatsApp and Telegram links there. But still, you can use the notepad calculator from the screen. Yes, you can use the notepad. That's it. You can do everything on your screen, but not outside of your screen. First, the first day the test need to be taken in person or can be taken remotely using a computer? No, you take it remotely wherever you are. It's perfectly fine. Your person is in front of the computer and you take the exam. It's not in an official center, so it's online. Just remember, for those of you who are not in the Brussels time, the exam is always the same time for everyone. Imagine that you're working in Tokyo. So the exam starts 10 a.m. Brussels time, but in Tokyo that will be, I don't know, 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Just guessing. So that will be it. You will get plenty of information about that, but it's always the same time for everyone, the same moment. Local time may differ. There was mentioning of a 2,000 square meter completed projects. How about unbuilt projects? In principle, they said build. So maybe your part is done and you can certify that your work is done. It's only part of the building that is not finalized and doesn't depend on you. You could provide this kind of information. Is there a possibility that they contact your actual employer to check your experience? No, they don't do that. They don't contact third parties. They just rely on the documents that you provide. During the test, does your room have to be super clean? Not necessarily. Only the table and your surroundings, and you need to be alone. I mean, if they detect, because they record you and they record your micro, so if they detect you are talking to someone, if there's someone behind you doing noise, something like that. I mean, now with the IT solutions, it's someone talking. If there are some public works outside, usually that's its filter. It's not a problem because we've seen that circumstances with some candidates. Are there any questions about the EU? We are not expecting any question about the EU. For instance, how many institutions does the EU have? No, this kind of question, no. If we are talking about the EU, meaning the regulation followed by the European institutions regarding their buildings and what kind of technical requirements they have to fulfill, yeah, that could be, but makes sense within the context of your competition. That's it. It's what we call EU questions, or could be called EU questions. How about if you have a baby? I'm afraid the baby need to be outside the room during the exam. And yeah, it's not the first time that we've seen this problem. Just referring to the solution that some candidates adopt is that they rent a hotel room just for the exam to take the exam there, or they made certain that their partner or whoever was available took the baby for a walk during the different part of the test. As you saw, the test is 65 minutes for the reasoning, 40 for the multiple choice, and 40 for the writing. So in the meantime, you can stay with your babies. I mean, that's, I guess, it's feasible. Do you believe experience related to the design of buildings and building system will be considered relevant? I'm afraid, Jose, that I'm not capable of saying this. That will depend on how it is related to the task and the areas referring the notice. Not being an expert in building myself, I can tell you, but check it yourself. And if you think so, explain like that, explain these elements, these arguments in your application. It should be fine. Christina, even if you're rejected because you don't fulfill the experience requirements, but you pass the exams, will you get the exam results? Yes. I mean, they will inform you that you're not eligible despite having succeeded in the results of the exam. We know, as I referred the example before of that candidate who passed competition, transfer competition, but got spelled for not eligible, but we managed to help this person to complain and finally was accepted on the list. So you will get the results at the end. The only thing is that if you don't pass the reasoning, you won't get results from the multiple choice and the written. If you pass the reasoning, you will get the results of the multiple choice. And if you don't pass the multiple choice, you won't get the results from the written. Yes, you need to pass the previous to get the results of the following. Okay, I don't know if there is any question left. Yeah, Lorenzo, could be the number of years of experience be accumulated between the 2,000 square one building and 10,000 multiple buildings. Cumulative, I mean that you've been working in a project of 2,000 for 2 years and then 4 years in a one or 10,000. Yes, that could be it. It's how we understand it. But in case of doubt, send a question to EPSO, because if many of you send the same question, they will release a public clarification, and it's always good. So any question you may have regarding the notice, we try to solve it, but still, don't be shy. Send it to EPSO the question. You can do it through the portal, through my space, through the candidate space, to communicate with EPSO and send your questions. Now, remember that with the new interface, with the candidate space, you have to do everything through that space. You cannot do it through the web page. Otherwise, they will reply, in this competition, you are supposed to submit any contact through the candidates portal. Angelique, unfortunately, this is quite exceptional. It's the first time that we've seen this competition of this level. There was one for building technicians a few years ago, but it was for assistants, not for officials 87. So this is a higher level. And also the test was a bit different at the time. Okay. Yeah, but at that time, 2017, 2018, we're referring when there was the all assessment center, the all process. So yeah, yeah, it's been a while. So any reference to that previous competition could be misleading because the whole process has changed a lot. Okay, so this is it for the moment. You will receive an email from us when the video becomes available on YouTube and with the information that you will requested. So in the meantime, we stay in touch and hope to see you maybe in our trainings or in the next webinars that we will organize. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.